looking there at live pictures of Capitol Hill, where the clock is really ticking on a potential government shutdown. It's just now 7 days away, and time is of the essence, except that most members are now nowhere in sight. They were sent home for the week without a clear plan after conservative hardliners once again scuttled Kevin McCarthy's plans. One of those hardliners, Congressman Matt Gaetz, joins me now. Thanks for being here, Congressman.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Abby.
I should note you are still on the Hill, so I'll take that as a sign that perhaps things are moving forward. But I have to ask you, because this is starting to come to a head here, if Speaker McCarthy puts a continuing resolution on the floor to keep the government open for 30 days, is that enough in your mind to force a vote to kick him out of his job?
I agree with many of my colleagues who say that if Speaker McCarthy embraces a clean continuing resolution to continue the spending policies of Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, that would most likely trigger a motion to vacate. Remember, I gave a speech last week detailing multiple areas where Kevin McCarthy has breached his agreement with House conservatives. There was a big thrust of that was the spending commitments, but also a vote on term limits, a vote on a balanced budget amendment, release of the January 6 tapes. These are things Kevin McCarthy promised. He hasn't done those things. We're here to hold him to account. And there are meetings happening. I just left a meeting with Congressman Biggs about the finer points of our Department of Homeland Security appropriations bill. We have a rule being drafted right now so that we can pass appropriations bills for our military, Department of Homeland Security, for our agriculture priorities, and also the Department of State and Foreign Ops. So those bills will have a good amalgamation of policy and spending cuts, and I think it'll put our country on better fiscal footing.
Do you have enough support to actually take away McCarthy's gavel?
Well, it depends on the Democrats. I saw in an interview this morning that Democrat Whip Catherine Clark said that if Democrats were to bail out Speaker McCarthy, they would require concessions. And that should trouble a lot of Republicans, because if we have a Republican speaker who is working for the Democrats because they're the ones who bailed him out, then I doubt we'll be able to make much progress for the voters who elected us.
But I'm asking, actually, what I'm really asking is, what's the plan B? If not McCarthy, then who? You?
No, I don't want to be speaker, but I do know we have a very talented group of members. It's a little uncomfortable to discuss right now because our number two, who would be naturally someone we would look to, is right now getting treatment for blood cancer and is not with us. We hope he has a full, fast recovery and would be right back into our leadership structure. Our number three is Tom Emmer. He's our whip. He's got a lot of credibility across different sections of the conference. But getting rid of McCarthy, if he has failed us for 8 months, if he has delayed the appropriations process, as even his allies conceded earlier this evening in the Rules Committee, then getting rid of him is sort of an end unto itself, because it shows that we've got the ability to pivot, make a better choice, and go forward and actually deliver.
But how is getting rid of McCarthy an end unto itself? If you get rid of him, but you can't elect a replacement who will do what you want them to do, that seems to kind of defeat the purpose. Do you have the votes, do you think, to elect someone who, in your view, would be better than McCarthy?
Oh, sure. I think that if we were back in a speaker contest, there are any number of people who would be able to assemble a coalition. And
there
I'm
weren't
not stuck
the last
on any
time
one...
around. There weren't the last time around.
Right, but we've had 8 months of experiences that inform how we think about these things now. 8 months ago, Kevin McCarthy hadn't broken the series of promises that he only made at that time. 8 months ago, Kevin McCarthy hadn't stalled the appropriations process. I mean, a Democrat from Colorado, Joe Neguse, made excellent points today, haranguing some of the Republicans in the Rules Committee, saying, well, gosh, if the border is such a priority, and if the Appropriations Committee had a border funding bill in the summer, why did more than 100 days pass before Kevin McCarthy put that legislation on the floor? We don't really have good answers to those questions, other than the fact that it's always the parlance in Washington to just wait until the very end and then jam all these bills together and get one up or down vote on funding the entire government. That is the way we have run since the mid-90s, and I'm trying to break the fever and liberate us from those up or down votes and get to single subject spending bills. It's an idea even folks on the left support, because it leads to more transparent, honest, and open government.
So, Congressman, a number of your Republican colleagues, they say that they're at a loss for understanding your strategy. Listen to what they had to say.
What are you asking for? You know, we need to pass appropriations bills, not a CR. Okay, we're trying to pass appropriations bill. You won't let us do that. So stop voting with Democrats. I think everybody's just confused because there's not rational explanations on the opposition.
At the end of the day, any final bill is going to be bipartisan. And if somebody doesn't realize that, they're truly clueless.
I understand what you're saying, that you want to take this bill by bill. But the question is, how will you do that in the next 7 days in a bipartisan way that will end up with something that is the law of the land?
There's no doubt that we are behind in the House of Representatives because we are poorly led. But to my friend and colleague Dan Crenshaw, he probably should have watched your program 10 days ago when I laid out exactly what we want: a vote on term limits, a vote on a balanced budget amendment, and then single subject spending bills. Now, we've been dilatory and delayed in that, and it was frustrating to me, Abby, that yesterday at 3 o'clock on a Thursday, Kevin McCarthy sent everybody home as if we're operating in the French work week. We should be starting at 7 in the morning, finishing at midnight, and getting our work done. There are members from across the Congress and across the Republican conference who are here doing that, but we are doing that in spite of our poor leadership, certainly not because of it. And, you know, to my friends and colleagues, I would say pretty simple. We want to vote individually on these appropriations bills, and we will not tolerate them being lumped together.
I think a lot of Americans would agree that they'd like to see folks working through the weekend to resolve this before there's a government shutdown. But I wonder, I mean, don't you think it is reasonable for members? I mean, you heard Mike Lawler there talking about a bipartisan fashion. Don't you think it is reasonable for them to work on the other side of the aisle if it means avoiding a shutdown that can actually hurt Americans, including thousands of your constituents?
No doubt. And Mike Lawler's right. The final solution in divided government always has to be bipartisan. But the question is, what platform and what paradigm do we use to engage that negotiation? I believe that we should negotiate each agency of government and each appropriation bill separately so that we get to a programmatic level of analysis. What I disagree with is the notion that we should start with the premise that we just fund everything the way it's been going the prior year, whether it's worked or not, whether it's exceeded, it's expended, it's expected distributions of funds or not. You see, that just leads to more of the same. It's actually precisely the reason that we are $33 trillion in debt, facing $2 trillion annual deficits. We cannot go on as a country that's spending $7 trillion and bringing in $5 trillion. So I hope we can get bipartisan agreement to reduce spending.
Look, I understand what you're saying about the spending levels, but the question is, how do we get from point A to point B, from where we are right now, which seems to be chaos, to a point where there's a solution and the government's not shut down in a week? This could have real impacts on a lot of federal workers, people who are working without pay, military service members who are actually in the line of fire right now, in harm's way right now. Are you confident that this will not have a shutdown, will not have a national security impact on this country, in addition to the economic impact that it will have?
Well, we have endured shutdowns before, and while they're certainly not helpful, and they do bring pain upon Americans who've done nothing wrong to lead us to that moment, we're at a moment right now where we have to take the bold action to break the fever, to stop governing by omnibus and continuing resolution. I am not certain that we are going to avoid a shutdown, but a shutdown of maybe 10 or 11 or 12 days certainly is different than a shutdown that would span multiple pay periods for federal employees. Let me make this one other point.
What is the longest you would go in a shutdown?
Well, I don't want to go at all, and I certainly think that the sooner we could get the government funded, the better. But there's a reason why we put the defense appropriations bill and the Homeland Security appropriations bill first, because we want to be able to say as House Republicans that we moved options for the Senate and Democrats to negotiate with us on the military spending bill so that our troops are paid, and on the Homeland Security bill so that we pay our Border Patrol and ICE. So there is a reason why we have prioritized some of our bravest and most valued fellow Americans in what we're putting forward to fund. And if Democrats and senators have ideas on those things, we'd like to negotiate them. We're just not going to negotiate through the context of how Washington has always worked with continuing resolutions and omnibus bills.
I should note that you did vote against the defense appropriations bill this week that, or
no, I
the,
didn't.
the rule.
You're wrong. No,
the rule to
Abby, this is going to be a very embarrassing moment when the internet corrects you on this. I voted for the defense rule both times.
Well, I stand corrected. Congressman, appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.